Okay, so now that we've talked about assembly editing and automatic editing, let's talk about what's called a three-point edit. This is a way of actually controlling some of the automatic editing process and giving yourself a little bit more freedom as well as control over the system itself. It's also a great way of actually targeting where you want clips to fall within the timeline. So let's go ahead and jump into this. So here we have our sequence again laid out with just these basic 4 clips. We have our 2 close-ups of our floor manager and our shot of our anchor. Now, to do a 3-point edit, the way we're going to work is to select a clip that we want. Let's find this clip of the monitor. We've already got it marked at 3 seconds, so this isn't bad. Now, what we're going to do is we want to decide where we might like to have this clip. Now, what we can do is actually come in and find a place we like to have the monitor. So perhaps right here. Now what we would want is to mark in and mark out the individual clip in the source monitor. We've got that part done already. Then on our timeline we either set an in point or an out point. Now whether it's an in point or an out point is going to make a difference here. If we set an in point, then the edits we're about to do are going to be placed prior or after where this in point is. If we set an out point, the edits we're going to do are going to be placed before this out point. So let's begin with a simple in point. So I move down here and then I'm going to click Mark In the program monitor. I could also just simply click I on my keyboard. So this has set this has set an in point, an in point on my timeline. Now it doesn't really matter where I move my playhead at this point because we have set a point that the edit's going to occur at. Now, using automatic editing, if I go in and just do an insert, the insert edit is going to happen exactly where that in point just was. So this new clip is inserted wherever that in point was. If I go Command Z to undo, Control click and clear in and out, and then instead of an in point I put an out point. I'll do the same insert edit. What has happened is the insert edit has occurred prior to where that out point was. So starting at that point, the insert edit pushes everything back. So the clip is inserted before that edit point. For a shortcut, we've got the insert as a default feature right here in the source monitor because 3-point edits are one of the more common types of edits that you do. So let's talk about this in a slightly different way. Now we talked about the insert edit as by talking about marking in and marking out on the source monitor and then marking an in point or out point on the timeline. A 3-point edit can actually work really well by marking on the timeline where you want something and then finding the clip and putting it into that location. So for example, if I knew I knew what I really wanted to see was another shot of my anchor here, and I really wanted to just come in and perhaps cover up from this point forward. What I could do is click Mark In at that point, and now I can just double click through my clips, find something that fits here. So maybe this wider shot, this closer shot, there we go, of my anchor. That looks nice. And now I'm going to overwrite. If you'll recall what this does, this actually is going to cover up from this point forward on the timeline. So if I just simply mark in, mark out, and click that, boom, it's right here on the timeline, and it has covered up from that endpoint on. Conversely, and I hit Command Z to undo, if I go in and I say, I like this point, but you know what, I'd really like to go from a close-up on, and I don't need any more of this than I absolutely need. What I could do is say, alright, well then let's go and put an out point here, mark in and out here, and then overwrite. So I've gotten this clip to cover up from where that out point is forward in my timeline, and even cover up part of the clip in front of it. So what this has done is it allows us to very quickly start adding things to the timeline and start building out that sequence very, very fast. Now, resetting back to my simple 4 clips, one of the things that we can do is actually decide how we want to patch clips and decide where we want to lay things out. So for example, if I turn on V2 and I patch V1 to V2, in other words, I essentially tell the computer that any automatic editing I do from this point forward, I want it to occur on V2, not V1. And any audio I want to be on A2, not A1. Now, any automatic editing I do from this point forward, whether it is 3-point editing or any other type of automatic editing, will actually come in and be done right here on V2 and A2. I didn't have that one selected, but there. Insert after. We're going to grab another random clip, insert after. And so here I am just lining everything up on V2 because I've selected it with my patching instead of V1. All my clips are now coming in A2 instead of A1. This is a great way of actually helping you target where you want clips to come in when you're doing this automatic editing. So for example, if I've come in and I've laid out a bunch of interviews in A1, maybe some voiceover in A2, but then I want to come in and start building in B-roll, building in coverage for those shots. What I can do is actually go in and patch maybe V2 for all my video and V3 for all my audio. And now when I bring in another clip, let's just grab 4 and I'll mark in, mark out, about 3 seconds. I'm going to find a good place for this, and what we'll do is mark in, and I'm going to just put an overwrite right there. Now what I've got is audio is coming in V3, video is coming in V2. Easy way of making sure that you know exactly where these automatic edits are going to happen. I can just build that sequence of shots at this point, and it's pretty fast and it's pretty easy.